Hi everyone, I'm Sandy Lene. Welcome to Psychic Creations. We have a very interesting show for you today, and we are going to be on location at the Nevada Historical Society in Reno, Nevada.
We'll introduce our speaker. Anna Harris is going to speak to us today. We have resurrected her. She will be speaking to us. And Debbie Lynn Smith will be portraying her. Anna Harris was the first woman in Douglas County, and possibly in the entire state of Nevada, to fight for and win getting her sole proprietor license. Even though her husband was still alive in 1891, this was unheard of, as women were considered household property back in those days. She had a fascinating life and did so much for the commerce and growth of Genoa, Gardnerville, and Minden, and even Rhyolite, Nevada. Debbie Lynn's presentation of Anna is poignant and funny and full of Nevada history. It shows the real pioneer spirit of early women in Nevada. So with that, Anna?
Oh, it's you. I was expecting you. Yes, I'm ready for my interview. Where do I begin? At the beginning. Well, I don't really remember that much about the beginning, but I was born in 1858 in Norway, although my family is Danish. My father was Norwegian and my mother was a Dane. I don't really remember much about Norway or Denmark, other than the fact that it was cold. Very, very, very cold. And other than that, I don't. But I do remember one thing. I remember my papa getting letters from his dear friend, Ardent Jensen. Ardent had migrated to this big, wild country called America. And he had settled in a small territory called Nevada. Papa was enamored by his wonderful letters from his friend. He would go and he would read them to us over and over, and we could see the life that Ardent and his family were living in a small little town called Gardnerville in the Carson Valley. Papa got the bug, and off we went. Papa decided he was going to move us to America. We decided to board a ship and come to America. I tragically remember the crossing. If anyone ever tells you that the crossing is easy, they've either never done it or they're liars. It was a horrible time for my family and myself. I must have come from Papa's side of the family because he told me I had that good, strong Norwegian stock, and I was able to not get seasick. Everyone else in my family was deathly ill. The stench in the hold, the cries of people moaning, the horrible, horrible bodily fluids that were coming out of everybody at every which end was awful. There was a shortage of water, a shortage of food, and I alone took care of my family. My father, my mother, my two brothers, and my blessed little sister, Paulina. Lena, such a sweet, honest, innocent little child, to be so sick and so emaciated at the end of our journey. We came around the end of South America and landed in San Francisco. I was relieved when I was finally back on terra firma. It was such an arduous trip, and my family was so sick. And all of them suffered so much, we hardly recognized each other. But we stayed up into a boarding hotel for a couple of weeks to get our strength back. And while we were there, little Lena, she'd look out the window and she'd say, "Look at all those ladies in their fancy dresses. We really must be in a fancy place and a new life." And I would look out the window with her and say, "Yes, Lena, yes." And she would go, "Someday, Miss Annie, you're going to have a big fancy dress like that with that hoop and all of those wonderful clothes." I giggled and I said, "Lena, how can I sit on a milking stool in a hoop skirt? That dress doesn't have an apron to hold eggs. Not practical for me. Oh, one day, Annie, I'm going to make sure you have a dress like that." I said, okay. And we went and we stayed. And Papa used his resources, and soon we had a wagon and all of our supplies. And we headed east. Most people were heading west, but we headed east. We settled in South Fork on the American River. Papa was a lumberman and very good at his job. He was able to set up a mill and have men working for him, and he told them which trees to harvest and which trees that were not going to make good lumber yield, and he was very successful. Papa was also very smart. We were in a cabin tent, which is great in the summer. In the winter, it was horrible. Mud and rain and everything was muddy. Well, Papa devised a floor so that all of our belongings and our beds and our bedrolls would be up off the ground. Everybody was jealous. So Papa made a lot of money making floors for cabin tents because everybody wanted to be up off that muddy, murky ground. But we did well, and Papa was very, very, very successful. Very successful. Mama and I took in laundry from some of the miners that were in the area, and she always had a big pot of stew going outside for those that were really hungry. Papa got another letter from his friend Arden, proclaiming the glories of the Carson Valley, its beautiful verdant green fields, pastures for days, a glorious river, the perfect Shangri-La. Heaven on earth, he called it, heaven on earth. Papa was so excited. So we moved east again. We settled in Genoa in 1870, long after the gold rush. But a lot of mines and a lot of factories and stuff were still processing the precious metals up on the hills. So we set up a home, thanks to his friend Arden Jensen, who was a lumberman as well, helped us build us a home, a large home, and we built several cabins, which, because people were still using the passage there in Genoa to lay over to rest their stock and stuff before they went up over the Sierras, we would rent the cabins, we would feed them, we would help them any way we could to present and get ready for their trip over the hills and the Sierras. Imagine how daunting it was to come all the way across the Great Basin, all that desert, only to hit a brick wall called the Sierras. Very, very intimidating for a lot of folks. Some even so intimidated that they stayed in Carson Valley. Don't blame them. We went ahead and we kept that going. And then Papa knew he could be better utilized on the other side of the mountain. We called it going over the hill. So he and my brothers, Chris and Chris, I forgot to tell you, both of my brothers are named Chris. Christopher's the oldest one. Steady, stalwart, just like Papa. Good head on his shoulders. The little one is Christian. Mama and Papa aptly named him Christian because they said that he was a surprise gift from God. So Chris and Chris went with Papa. They went over the hill, leaving Mama and I and Lena to take care of the house and the cabins, where we successfully did so because we started raising cattle and pigs and chickens and goats. We had milk, we had cream, we had butter, we had produce. good, solid Danish stock can grow food and eat it. So we had lots of produce and lots of stuff to give, and several times during the year, wagons bound for Virginia City and Silver City and Gold Hill and Dayton would stop by our little farm to pick up fresh produce and fresh meat to take up to the miners that were still working the mines up in the Comstock. We did well. We did well. And life was good. Papa would send one of the Chris's over every once in a while with a little extra money, so we were doing really well. Our area grew, our little farm grew. We did well, and I was so happy because Lena was flourishing. She got over her horrible death and sickness from the boat. She was getting healthy, and she had such a glow to her precious little face. Her features were so fine, she looked just like a little china doll. Absolutely gorgeous. And so life continued. Soon Lena caught the eye of Aaron Jensen, Mr. Jensen's oldest son. At age 16, she was blossoming. She was so beautiful. I was so proud of her. She and Aaron were married. And they moved to Gardnerville. I was crestfallen. I missed my little Lena. I would think of excuses to ride across the valley. Mama, we need more muslin for vegetable bags. Mama, we need more ribbons. Mama, don't I need to go pick up seeds at the Mercantile in Gardnerville? Can I just please go see Lena? One day she actually packed me an overnight bag and said, go, have a good time, I'll be fine here. That was a joyous trip, it really was. Time moved on, and soon I was getting older. But I did attract the attention of a gentleman caller. Mose was an interesting person. He'd recently lost his wife and had a young son, Abraham, who desperately needed a mother in his life. Time was dragging on, and I didn't look like I was somebody that could actually catch a man just for my looks like sweet little Paulina did. So Mose and I were married in 1876. Mose was 33 years my senior. Abraham was a joy. A little wild-spirited there at first, but we got him corrected. And Mose and I became man and wife. We continued to be married and have a life there in Genoa. Mose had a mercantile in Genoa. He had a small store where settlers that were coming in to go over the Sierras could purchase their goods and services and do what they needed to do. And soon, little Emma came along. Sweet little girl, very sturdy stock like I am. She was a wonder and a delight to my eyes. And then we had Joseph. Oh, Joseph. So much like my papa. Just like him. Strong-willed, handsome, sweetest little guy. I lost him in the winter of 1870. He lost his life to a fever in the winter. He was the love of my life. It broke my heart, it broke my will, it broke my strength. I couldn't go on, I'd lost my baby. I took to my bed, and thank God Mama was around, because I had never made it. I was crestfallen. I did not want to go on. And finally one day Mama came in and she goes, Annie, she says, where's that little girl that nursed her family? Where's that strong little Norwegian girl that brought her family around the Cape of Good Horn? Where is that girl? Where is she? She needs to come out. She's got a daughter and a son that needs her. She's got a mother that needs her. She's got a sister that needs her. I contemplated that. I still did not want to go on. But life is tough. Pioneering is even tougher. I put on my big girl's bloomers, and went on. I got back up, I started back into my routine, and I was a lot better for it. Thank God for Mama and her good sense to get me out of my bed of remorse. Mose came along in 1885. He was fun. He was just like his daddy, short and stocky, full of rambunctious and full of wanderlust. I could never keep track of where that boy was. Thank goodness for Emma, because she was able to keep track of him and not let him wander off. And soon Hannah was born, and then Samuel, and then Placzek, or Pat we called him. Life was busy in my household, very, very busy. Lots of children, lots of mouths to feed, lots of clothes to darn and wash and take care of. Busy time, very busy time. But we survived. Mama was healthy. Lena would come for a visit every once in a while across the valley. So it was a good time. Let me tell you just a little bit about my husband, Mose. Mose was born in 1825 in Missouri. Mose came west with the rest of the crowd for the gold. He did pretty well in the gold fields for himself, enough to open up a small mercantile in Genoa. But Mose never did quite get over his wanderlust. Every spring he would load up the team and the wagon, and off he'd go with supplies. He'd go to Virginia City, to Dayton, to Silver City, all of them. Then he got the notion to go south. And he'd go to Bodie and Aurora and Lundy and Mono Mills. Mose would leave in April, weather permitting, and be back in October. He'd leave the store in the good hands of his two best friends, who'd promptly run it to the ground in about a month and a half, leaving Mama and me and our 7 children destitute. Fortunately, Mama was there in town. I was able to move in with her with the kids, and we went right back to the routine of the farm, the produce, the eggs, the milk, the chickens, the beef. And we were fine. We were absolutely fine. Mose had come home in October, full of wonderful, wonderful stories and nothing in his pocket. So he'd go into debt again to start the mercantile back up for the winter, borrow from this person, borrow from that person, and we'd get the mercantile back up and running so that all winter long people could come by and they could purchase their goods and services. And then come April, he'd take off again. And his friends would run the store into the ground again. I asked him and begged him and pleaded him, let me run the store. I can run the store. I know what I'm doing. I know a good fair price. I know how to measure material. I know how to weigh out flour and sugar. Let me run the store. Would he? No. I'm a woman. Couldn't do that. Unheard of. So this cycle went on for several years. So finally, as Mama's health was starting to grow weaker, and she was not doing as well as she could have been, I decided the time was now. I went to the courthouse in Genoa, and I gathered up the paperwork and asked anybody and everybody I knew, how do you get a sole proprietorship? How do you get your own business license? Well, ma'am, we're so sorry, but you're a woman, and you're still married. Now, little lady, if your husband will come in and fill out that paperwork for you, we'll be happy to help you. My husband? My husband, the drunk and who owes everybody in town multitudes of dollars? Really? I don't think so. So I worked on the paperwork myself. I tried it, I submitted it, I tried it, I submitted it, I changed it. I kept pestering him. I think they just did this to get rid of me. But November 9th, 1891, I got a sole proprietorship in just my name, Anna Harris. No mo's about it. He was out of the picture. Somewhere close to that time, Mama passed. She had to move on, and I totally understood that, but it broke my heart again. But there was no wallowing in my pity at that time. I had a job to do. I went out and tallied up everything that we owned in Genoa, talked to the good folks in that area. I sold everything in Genoa, lock, stock, and barrel. Moved across the river to Gardnerville. Our dear family friend, the Jensens, Arden and Aaron, and of course Paulina, and their whole family chipped in. And they built us a mercantile with the living quarters over the top of it. So proudly, in December of 1893, I opened A. Harris and Sons Mercantile. Now, of course, I couldn't open it up as Anna Harris's Mercantile because, again, I'm a woman. And nobody would have shopped there. I would have been boycotted right out of town. So what we did is we opened it up as A. Harris. We did well. Thank God for Emma and Hannah. They were able to take care of the little boys while I was busy trying to run a store. And the older boys, Abram and Mose, now 31 and 21, got the Wonderlight just like their father. They loaded up 2 big wagons, and off they went. Broke my heart to see those wagons pulling out with my children in them. Not knowing when I would see them again, not knowing if I would see them again. They were headed for the gold fields near Death Valley. They settled in Rhyolite and opened up what was called Harris Brothers Mercantile. The building still stands today. I was so proud of those boys. They sent letters back of saying how well received they were and how much fun they were having and how everybody loved the idea of how fair they were, and they were so open and giving to the public, and they were coming quickly part of the community and accepted, and it was wonderful for my heart to know that my boys had taken off and had decided to become my sons and not follow in their father's wonderless ways. Mose wasn't doing well. The man drank himself silly every day, and when we were still living in Genoa, oh my gosh, he was at that bar every day. And he was particularly at that bar when a certain young lady came down from Virginia City by stage on her way down to either Bodie or Aurora. Every man that within a walking distance or 100 miles would flock to see Miss Julia Belay. That woman, she was something else. Not a decent married man in the world could be safe from her wily charms. Why, that woman, she could convince a giant redwood to lay down and become toothpicks. She had her ways, and my Mose was no stronger around her than any other man. So I was grateful when we moved to Gardnerville. But sadly Mose, in 1896, he succumbed to his illnesses. He'd had a good run, but now I was on my own. I didn't have my older boys with me, but I did have the strength of Hannah and Emma, and they kept me going. And of course, Lena was just down the street, so that worked out really well. She was awesome. She was such a good girl, and she was so beautiful with her babies, and I had nieces and nephews, and it was a really, really good time. My business flourished. It was over the moon with business, people coming by, repeat customers. My creditors gave me unlimited credit to order whatever I needed. I was a successful businesswoman, absolutely successful. And I soon caught the eye of a Mr. Fritz Bierman. Fritz was a wonderful man, loving and giving, such a sweet, sweet person. He owned 2 saloons in Gardnerville and Minden, and the only ice cream parlor in northern Nevada. What's not to love? The man had an ice cream parlor. Fritz and I were soon married in 1898. He was such a loving father to my children and a loving father to my grandchildren, because Emma had now married and had a grandson. I had a grandson. Such an honest, generous man. He bought me these pearl earrings and the pearl necklace when we went on a trip to San Francisco. He'd take me there twice a year just so I could buy pretty things to put in the mercantile. He let me keep my business in my name. He was very forward-thinking for that day and age, such a generous man, and we really, really had a good life together. It was so much fun. I was so blessed to have him in my life and into my family. The girls grew, their families grew. Samuel and Platt finally quit chasing around after those Settlemeyer boys. You know, those Settlemeyer boys were famous for tipping over outhouses everywhere. Finally got them broke of them, and they turned out to be really helpful and good boys too. So we kept the mercantile going, and we life was good. Life was good. Then I heard those words, "Fire! Fire!" up and down the street. I looked out the window. We were living over one of the saloons of Fritz's. The mercantile was on fire. Everything that I'd worked for, struggled, scrimped, and saved for was gone. Tearful eyes, I looked at Fritz, and Fritz says, "If you want another one, we'll rebuild it." And I looked at him, and I finally, after my stubborn, independent streak, said, "You going to take care of me?" He goes, "Forever." So we decided not to rebuild the mercantile, not at all. Life was good. As I said, finally in my life, I was being taken care of. I didn't have to be the caretaker. And I was happy and content. Excuse me? Oh, distress? Dear sweet Lena, she always said a woman needed a dress to be married in and buried in. Such a thoughtful girl. I'm so sorry that I don't get to spend more time with her, but she's so busy with her family and her grandkids now. It's just such a busy, busy life. Pardon me? The date? It's December 3rd, 1938. I'm sorry, what was that? Yes, St. Peter. I'm ready.
Well, Debbie Lynn / Anna Harris is an awesome, awesome Chautauqua performer. Now, if you would like to be a guest on my show, you can contact me at my website, which is www.sandypsychicstones.com, or at my email address, which is admin@sandypsychicstone.com. It will be my pleasure to see you again on the next show.